Hi there folks, and welcome to this web segment of how to create best practice assessment tools. My name is Marc Ratcliffe from MRWED Training and Assessment. Now in terms of our agenda today team, we'll be looking at the assessment journey, followed by some definitions to get us on our way, and finish up with those 3 key steps to developing an assessment tool. First things first, we have the assessment journey. And I really like this analogy of being able to sail the high seas with our assessment. The first thing we need to be able to do is to navigate the waters in which we sail. And for me, this includes the principles of assessment and the rules of evidence. Essentially, are we asking the right questions, and is the evidence we collect likely to produce a competent result? To be able to do this and to make sure that we go full speed ahead and that we've got the wind in our sails, we have to have that full picture of the benchmark standard. What does it say in the unit of competency and the assessment requirements? For instance, we're looking for the elements and the performance criteria, then checking out the performance evidence and the knowledge evidence required to be captured, and in the end, checking the assessment conditions so we know how they should be assessed. Now these are the standards from the new streamlined training packages, but if you're using the former ones there, the previous training packages, you might know the knowledge evidence and performance evidence as required knowledge and skills, and we used to call it the assessment context rather than the assessment conditions. So what is meant by assessment? Well, here's a quick definition. Assessment is the process of collecting evidence and making a judgment as to whether competency has been achieved. Now I'm going to double down on this and look at some other definitions that'll help us with today's topic. Now, first thing first, we have the assessment instrument, and this is the documentation developed by an assessor to capture the evidence of competence. Now, this may include checklists for work samples, let's say, or an observation checklist, maybe the templates or pro formas that we give to the candidates to complete, or even the questions we might give them in a written or an oral test. On the other hand, the assessment tool is the whole shebang and combines the instrument we've just spoken about with relevant instructions for both the candidate and the assessor. This guidance may include things like the context and conditions of the assessment, the specific tasks that need to be administered to the student, an outline of the evidence to be gathered, and finally the decision-making rules or evidence criteria used to judge the quality of the student's performance. So what are these 3 specific steps that we're talking about today? First of all, we've got the planning. The second step is the design and development. And then the final step are the quality checks. Now the first step is all about the planning. And the devil really is in the detail here. We have to have a full picture of the benchmark standard and a really good idea of how we're going to capture the proof of someone's competence. Here are some things to consider. Who is the learner cohort? Are they an experienced group, a group of school leavers, or maybe a mixed group? Who will collect the evidence? Will it be you as the trainer and assessor? Maybe you'll ask the candidate to put together a portfolio of evidence, or a third party might be involved to capture the proof. Where will the assessment be conducted? Will it be on the job, online, or maybe in the classroom? And finally, when will it be conducted? Once we've got these answers, we can start to select the types of assessment methods we need. There are 5 types of assessment methods: direct observation, product-based methods, questioning, third-party evidence, and finally, portfolio. So now we know all the benchmark standards and who's going to be involved in the process, we can start to put stage 2 into action. This is the design and development phase. There are 5 steps to the design and development part of the process, and step 1 is all about the context and conditions of the assessment. Let's imagine for a second that we're assessing people as a lion tamer. Do you think it would be appropriate for them to be assessed in a classroom with a plush toy, or do they need to be down at the circus actually doing the job? Now, the critical thing here about the context and conditions is asking ourselves the really important question, does it faithfully represent the conditions that would normally be found in a workplace? What is the task to be administered to the candidate? Is it something they have to do by themselves, or is it okay for it to be assessed in tandem? When it comes to these tasks to be administered, there are four key considerations. What do they have to do? What do they have to say? What do they have to write? And what do they have to create? Or it could be a combination of all four. The instructions we provide then have to outline the tasks very specifically that the learner has to do to demonstrate that competence. Next is an outline of the evidence to be gathered from the candidate. And the thing to remember here is that evidence will protect our decision. If we don't have enough evidence, we've got to send them back not guilty of competence. And that's a nice analogy to think about. We're trying to prove their guilt of competence beyond reasonable doubt. We then use this evidence criteria to judge the quality of the student performance. It gives us very clear guidelines about what a right answer looks like and often manifests itself as an assessor guide or a marking guide. Now, the final step in the design and development process is the administration, recording and reporting requirements. We need to know what to do with it once we've completed the assessment. We've captured all the proof, we've made our decision against the evidence criteria. What do we do next? Do we have to provide feedback to the candidate? Do we give them written feedback? Do we email it? Do we put it up in the cloud? Do we have to get our own management system and add the information ourselves, or does somebody else in our organization do that for us? All of that information needs to be known to us so we can put the right instructions on the instruments and the tools that we use. Step 3 are the quality checks. We want to make sure that everything's working before we take it out to our final customers, as it were. And these quality checks are things we should be doing on an ongoing basis anyway, but it's one of those things that people kind of forget to do. They get all up close and personal with the design because that's the sexy part of the process, but in the end we have to check that it's doing everything that it intended to do. So there are a range of benefits for trialing, reviewing, and refining our assessment instruments. Consultation with industry, for instance, can help us to improve the content accuracy and make sure that it's relevant to the workplace and is using the most appropriate language. Trialing the tools beforehand will help to test their effectiveness without adverse impact on the learner. And those findings of the trial will help us to predict whether the tool is going to be cost effective, engaging to the learner, and likely to produce valid and reliable evidence. So there you have it, folks. We've got 3 key steps in creating best practice assessment tools. Now you've got to think about your own situation now and think about what you're going to choose from today, maybe what you're going to lose from today, so that you too can create great assessment situations and experiences for your learners. So thanks for joining us on another Mr. WED webcast. Good luck in putting into practice those 3 steps to making a best practice assessment tool. We'll see you next time.